Your mind moves faster than your discipline. Thought appears. Emotion rises. Reaction follows. Most people obey that sequence. They react before they think. They follow impulse instead of control. This audiobook is about changing that pattern. Master your mind. Not through force. Through regulation. Pause before reaction. Direct your attention. Enforce your standards. When your mind is controlled, your life becomes stable. Everything begins there. Your mind produces thoughts constantly. Many of them appear without invitation. They arrive quickly. They feel convincing. Most people assume every thought deserves belief. That assumption creates instability. That's the key. Thoughts are automatic. Belief is optional. When a thought appears, you often accept it immediately. You do not question it. You do not observe it. You react to it. This reaction creates emotional volatility. One thought produces irritation. Another produces doubt. Another produces fear. Emotion follows thought quickly. Reaction follows emotion. Control disappears in seconds. Everything begins in the mind. If the mind is uncontrolled, behavior becomes unstable. If behavior is unstable, results fluctuate. Fluctuation weakens confidence. Confidence weakened increases emotional sensitivity. The cycle repeats. You have a choice. Believe every thought automatically. Or observe it before agreement. Observation creates distance. Distance creates clarity. Clarity restores control. Most people treat thoughts as instructions. If the mind says something, they obey. The mind says you are tired. They stop. The mind says something is difficult. They avoid it. The mind says someone offended them. They react. This pattern trains emotional obedience. You must interrupt it. It's not about suppressing thought. Thought cannot be stopped completely. The brain produces thoughts continuously. It is designed that way. It's not about stopping thought. It's about discipline. Discipline decides which thoughts deserve influence. That distinction changes everything. Stillness is your first tool. When a thought appears, pause. Do not react immediately. Slow your breathing. Relax your posture. Let the thought exist without immediate action. That moment creates power. Reaction removes power. You do not need their permission to question your own mind. Many thoughts are inaccurate. Some exaggerate problems. Some predict failure. Some replay past mistakes. Some invent conflict that does not exist. If you obey these thoughts automatically, you train instability. You strengthen emotional turbulence. Observation weakens their authority. Imagine a thought appearing. This will not work. Most people react immediately. They withdraw effort. They reduce commitment. But the thought itself was never verified. It was simply accepted. That's the key. A thought is not a command. It is a suggestion. Suggestions must be evaluated. Evaluation requires stillness. Stillness slows reaction. Slower reaction improves judgment. Improved judgment strengthens discipline. Most people live inside their thoughts. They do not observe them. They become them. If anger appears, they become angry. If doubt appears, they become doubtful. If fear appears, they retreat. This identity fusion creates chaos. You must separate awareness from thought. You observe the thought. You do not become it. You have a choice. Let the mind lead. Or let discipline lead. Discipline begins when awareness steps forward. Awareness notices patterns. It sees repetition. Certain thoughts appear frequently. They appear when you are tired. They appear when something is difficult. They appear when your comfort is threatened. These thoughts are predictable. Predictable thoughts should not surprise you. They should be expected. When you expect them, they lose influence. When they lose influence, control increases. Stillness makes this possible. When the mind produces a negative thought, pause. Observe it calmly. Do not fight it. Do not suppress it. Simply notice it. Then return to your standard. That is discipline in motion. Most people waste energy arguing with their thoughts. They attempt to defeat them emotionally. This approach strengthens them. Emotion feeds the thought. Stillness weakens it. You observe without engagement. You continue your action. Action replaces rumination. Rumination traps attention. Attention trapped increases emotional intensity. Emotion then produces more thoughts. Everything connects. Your attention must remain directed. Directed attention stabilizes the mind. Stability strengthens discipline. Discipline weakens emotional volatility. You must also stop identifying with every mental story. The mind creates narratives constantly. It explains events quickly. It judges situations instantly. Many of these interpretations are inaccurate. If you accept them blindly, behavior becomes reactive. Reaction erodes authority. Authority begins inside the mind. Internal authority means you evaluate before reacting. Evaluation requires pause. Pause requires discipline. You have a choice. React to every thought. Or regulate your response. Most people choose reaction because it feels natural. Natural does not mean effective. Natural impulses often produce unstable outcomes. Discipline produces stability. Stability produces progress. Progress reinforces confidence. Confidence stabilizes the mind further. The cycle can work in your favor. But only if you interrupt automatic belief. Every time you observe a thought without reacting, control grows. Every time you question a thought before obeying, discipline strengthens. This practice compounds. Small moments of awareness accumulate. Accumulation reshapes identity. Identity determines behavior. Behavior determines outcome. That's the key. Mastering your mind begins with observation. You stopped obeying every thought. Now you must learn how to slow reaction when thoughts escalate into emotion. Your mind moves quickly. Faster than your discipline. A thought appears. Emotion follows. Reaction happens almost instantly. Most people never interrupt the sequence. They believe the reaction is natural. They believe the reaction is justified. They believe speed is necessary. Speed is the problem. That's the key. Mental escalation happens in seconds. A small thought becomes a large emotion. A minor irritation becomes anger. A moment of doubt becomes anxiety. Escalation grows when reaction is immediate. The mind amplifies whatever you feed it. If you respond quickly, the emotional signal becomes stronger. The brain interprets reaction as confirmation. Confirmation strengthens the emotion. Stronger emotion produces stronger thoughts. The cycle accelerates. You have a choice. Allow the mind to escalate. Or interrupt the escalation with stillness. Stillness is not inactivity. Stillness is regulation. It slows the process. It creates space between thought and response. That space restores control. Most people never pause. They feel something and act immediately. A message irritates them. They reply quickly. A problem appears. They assume the worst. A delay occurs. They become frustrated. The reaction multiplies the problem. One moment of pause could have prevented it. Stillness is a trained behavior. It does not happen automatically. Your nervous system prefers speed. Speed helps survival in primitive environments. Modern life requires something different. Modern discipline requires regulation. When a strong thought appears, pause. Slow your breathing. Inhale calmly. Exhale longer than the inhale. Relax your shoulders. These small actions regulate your nervous system. This is not symbolic. It is biological. Breathing slower signals safety to the brain. Safety reduces emotional intensity. Reduced intensity restores clarity. Clarity strengthens decision-making. Decision-making protects discipline. Most emotional mistakes occur at the peak of intensity. Anger peaks quickly. Fear peaks quickly. Excitement peaks quickly. If you act at the peak, you lose control. If you pause, the intensity falls. Emotion has a natural decline. But reaction restarts the cycle. That's the key. Delay weakens. Emotional escalation. Immediate reaction strengthens it. You do not need their permission to pause. Even when someone expects an immediate response. Even when pressure increases. Silence can be strategic. Silence creates stability. Stability preserves authority. Authority over yourself is the foundation of discipline. Stillness also improves perception. When you pause, you gather information. You notice details. You evaluate the situation more accurately. Most emotional reactions are based on interpretation, not fact. The mind fills gaps quickly. If a message sounds harsh, the mind assumes disrespect. If a delay happens, the mind assumes rejection. These interpretations are often wrong. Stillness allows correction. Correction prevents escalation. Escalation creates unnecessary conflict. Conflict drains attention. Attention is required for disciplined action. You must protect it. You have a choice. React instantly. Or pause deliberately. Most people feel uncomfortable with silence. They believe silence shows weakness. In reality, silence demonstrates control. Controlled individuals do not rush. They observe first. Observation improves judgment. Judgment stabilizes behavior. Stabilized behavior reinforces discipline. Stillness also trains patience. Patience reduces impulsive decisions. Impulsive decisions often produce regret. Regret drains energy. Energy lost weakens focus. Focus is necessary for mental mastery. Everything connects. Practicing stillness daily builds resilience. You pause during disagreement. You pause when irritation rises. You pause when pressure appears. Each pause strengthens control. Control becomes habit. Habit reshapes identity. Identity determines long-term behavior. It's not about suppression. It's about discipline. Suppression denies emotion. Discipline regulates it. Regulation keeps your mind stable. A stable mind produces better outcomes. Better outcomes reinforce discipline. Discipline beats impulse through regulation. You do not rush to react. You pause. You observe. You respond deliberately. This practice protects your mind from escalation. It weakens emotional storms before they grow. You stopped obeying every thought. Now you understand how to interrupt escalation. Next, you must decide where your attention goes. Because uncontrolled attention strengthens emotional thinking. Your attention decides what grows inside your mind. Where attention goes, influence follows. Most people treat attention casually. They allow it to move without direction. They follow every distraction. They follow every emotional signal. This weakens control. That's the key. Uncontrolled attention strengthens emotional thinking. Every time you focus on irritation, irritation grows. Every time you replay doubt, doubt increases. Every time you follow anxiety, anxiety expands. Attention is not passive. Attention feeds mental patterns. If you feed instability, instability becomes stronger. If you feed discipline, discipline becomes stronger. You have a choice. Let attention drift. Or direct it deliberately. Most people believe attention is automatic. It is not. Attention can be trained. Training begins with awareness. Notice what you focus on throughout the day. Notice how quickly your attention moves. A notification appears. You look. A thought appears. You follow it. A memory appears. You replay it. Attention jumps constantly. This constant movement fragments the mind. Fragmentation weakens discipline. A fragmented mind struggles to execute. Execution requires sustained focus. Sustained focus requires control. You must begin treating attention as a resource. It is limited. If you waste it, discipline weakens. If you protect it, discipline strengthens. Stillness helps direct attention. When the mind jumps to a distraction, pause. Do not immediately follow the distraction. Observe the urge. Let it pass. Return attention to the task. This redirection is training. Each time you redirect attention, mental strength increases. Each time you surrender attention, distraction grows stronger. Attention works like a muscle. What you repeat becomes easier. Repeat distraction and distraction becomes automatic. Repeat focus and focus becomes natural. Most people do not realize how much emotional thinking comes from uncontrolled attention. A single negative thought appears. Attention follows it. Then another thought appears. Then another. Within minutes, the mind creates an entire story. The story feels real. Emotion intensifies. But the entire chain began with one moment of attention. If attention had shifted earlier, the story would have dissolved. That's the key. Attention controls emotional amplification. Emotion grows when attention feeds it. Emotion weakens when attention withdraws. You do not need their permission to redirect your mind. Even when distraction feels compelling. Even when emotional thoughts feel urgent. Urgency often comes from habit. Habits can be changed. Change begins with discipline. You notice the thought. You refuse to follow it. You return attention deliberately. This simple action builds authority over the mind. Authority reduces mental noise. Noise weakens clarity. Clarity strengthens discipline. Attention must also be protected from external noise. Information overload destabilizes the mind. Constant media. Constant messages. Constant stimulation. These inputs compete for your attention. Competition fragments focus. Fragmented focus reduces depth. Depth is necessary for meaningful work. Without depth, discipline collapses into shallow effort. You must create boundaries. Silence notifications during focus. Remove unnecessary stimulation. Simplify your environment. This is not extreme. It is strategic. A quiet environment strengthens attention. Strong attention strengthens discipline. It's not about restriction. It's about discipline. Discipline directs attention toward what matters. Emotion directs attention toward what feels intense. Intensity does not equal importance. Most intense signals are temporary. Important tasks require calm attention. Calm attention produces consistent progress. Consistent progress builds confidence. Confidence stabilizes the mind. You have a choice. Allow attention to follow emotion. Or train attention to follow intention. Intention creates direction. Direction stabilizes behavior. Stable behavior builds discipline. Over time, something changes. Attention becomes steady. Distractions lose power. Emotional spirals weaken. Your mind becomes quieter. Quiet minds make better decisions. Better decisions create better outcomes. Better outcomes reinforce discipline. Mastering your mind requires directing attention. You stopped obeying every thought. You learned to pause before escalation. Now you understand that attention determines what grows inside the mind. Next, you must learn how to question emotional signals themselves. Because emotion often feels convincing even when it is inaccurate. Emotion feels convincing. When it appears, it demands attention. It tells you something is urgent. It tells you something is wrong. Most people treat emotion as truth. That assumption creates instability. That's the key. Emotion is information. It is not always accurate. The body reacts quickly to interpretation. A thought appears. The brain predicts threat or reward. Emotion follows immediately. But prediction is not certainty. Many emotional reactions come from misinterpretation. If you accept emotion as fact, your behavior becomes reactive. Reaction creates chaos. Chaos weakens discipline. You have a choice. Obey the emotion. Or evaluate it. Evaluation requires stillness. Stillness slows reaction. Slower reaction improves judgment. Improved judgment strengthens discipline. Most emotional responses happen automatically. Someone speaks sharply. You feel offended. Someone delays responding. You feel rejected. A challenge appears. You feel anxious. The mind interprets the situation instantly. Emotion confirms the interpretation. But the interpretation may be wrong. Stillness allows correction. When emotion appears, pause. Notice the physical signal. Tension in the chest. Tightness in the jaw. Increased heart rate. Observe the sensation without reacting. Observation creates distance. Distance restores clarity. Clarity weakens emotional distortion. You do not need their permission to question your own emotional reaction. Even when the feeling is strong. Strength of emotion does not equal accuracy. Fear can exaggerate danger. Anger can exaggerate disrespect. Excitement can exaggerate opportunity. Emotion magnifies perception. Magnification can distort reality. If you act immediately, distortion controls behavior. That is how people make decisions they regret. That is how unnecessary conflict begins. Emotion must be examined before action. Examination requires discipline. It's not about suppression. It's about discipline. Suppression denies feeling. Discipline regulates response. You acknowledge the emotion. You do not obey it blindly. This distinction protects stability. Most people confuse intensity with importance. The stronger the emotion, the more urgent it feels. Urgency pressures you to react. Reaction often amplifies the problem. Stillness interrupts urgency. Urgency fades when reaction stops. When you slow your breathing, emotional intensity declines. When intensity declines, thinking improves. Improved thinking restores perspective. Perspective allows balanced response. Balanced response strengthens discipline. You have a choice. Treat emotion as command. Or treat emotion as signal. Signals require interpretation. Interpretation requires calm awareness. When you practice this consistently, emotional storms lose power. Anger appears but fades faster. Fear appears but does not dominate. Excitement appears but does not distort judgment. The mind becomes steadier. A steady mind makes deliberate decisions. Deliberate decisions create reliable outcomes. Reliable outcomes reinforce discipline. Emotion also feeds mental narratives. One feeling leads to multiple thoughts. Those thoughts create stories. Stories strengthen emotion. The loop continues. Observation breaks the loop. You see the feeling. You question the interpretation. You return to your standard. Standards stabilize behavior. Behavior shapes identity. Identity determines long-term direction. Everything connects. Emotional discipline does not remove emotion. It prevents emotion from becoming authority. Authority must belong to discipline. Discipline evaluates before acting. Discipline pauses before responding. Discipline directs attention toward reality. When discipline leads, emotion becomes manageable. When emotion leads, discipline collapses. You stopped obeying every thought. You learned to pause before escalation. You began directing attention deliberately. Now you understand emotion itself must be questioned. Next, you must simplify your internal environment. Because chaos inside the mind weakens control. A chaotic mind cannot remain disciplined. Noise inside the mind weakens control. Too many thoughts. Too many decisions. Too many unfinished tasks. All of it competes for attention. Competition fragments focus. Fragmented focus weakens discipline. That's the key. Internal chaos creates emotional instability. When the mind is overloaded, reaction becomes faster. Stress rises quickly. Patience disappears. Small problems feel larger than they are. Clarity becomes difficult. Most people believe their emotions are the problem. Often the environment inside the mind is the real issue. When your mind is crowded, regulation becomes harder. You have a choice. Allow chaos to accumulate. Or simplify your internal environment. Simplification begins with structure. Unstructured days create constant decision-making. Should I start this? Should I switch tasks? Should I respond now? Each decision consumes mental energy. Mental energy is limited. When it runs low, emotion takes control. Emotion is faster than discipline. Discipline requires clarity. Clarity requires mental space. You must remove unnecessary noise. Too many commitments. Too many distractions. Too many inputs. All of these weaken stability. Stillness helps reduce internal chaos. Pause. During the day. Step away from constant stimulation. Slow your breathing. Let the mind settle. When stimulation decreases, thoughts slow down. Slower thoughts allow better judgment. Better judgment strengthens discipline. You do not need their permission to create mental boundaries. Not every message deserves immediate response. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every problem deserves your energy. Selective attention protects clarity. Clarity protects discipline. Most internal chaos comes from unfinished loops. Tasks started but not finished. Decisions delayed. Problems repeatedly revisited. These open loops occupy mental space. They sit quietly in the background. But they consume attention. Attention consumed weakens focus on the present task. Weak focus increases frustration. Frustration fuels emotional reaction. Everything connects. Closing loops restores mental space. Finish what you begin. Make decisions when possible. Write down unresolved tasks instead of holding them in memory. Externalizing tasks reduces cognitive load. Reduced load stabilizes the mind. A stable mind maintains discipline more easily. Your environment also shapes internal clarity. Cluttered spaces create subtle stress signals. Visual chaos stimulates the brain continuously. Continuous stimulation reduces calm attention. Simplify your surroundings. Clean spaces support clear thinking. Clear thinking strengthens discipline. It's not about perfection. It's about discipline. Discipline creates order. Order stabilizes behavior. Stable behavior strengthens identity. Identity shapes outcomes. You must also simplify your daily rhythm. Wake at a consistent time. Work in defined blocks. Pause deliberately. Finish defined tasks. Predictable rhythm reduces mental friction. Reduced friction makes discipline easier. When your day follows structure, your mind relaxes. Relaxed minds make better decisions. Better decisions reinforce discipline. You have a choice. Live inside constant mental noise. Or create order deliberately. Order reduces emotional volatility. Volatility weakens control. Control requires stability. Stability requires simplicity. Most people underestimate the power of removing chaos. They try to control emotion directly. But emotion often grows from overload. When overload disappears, emotional intensity decreases naturally. Stillness returns. Clarity returns. Discipline becomes easier to maintain. Mastering your mind requires order. Order inside the mind produces calm behavior. Calm behavior produces deliberate action. Deliberate action produces progress. Progress reinforces discipline. You stopped obeying every thought. You paused before escalation. You directed attention intentionally. You questioned emotional signals. Now you understand that mental chaos must be removed. Next, you must learn how to respond deliberately instead of reacting automatically. Reaction is automatic. Response is deliberate. Most people do not notice the difference. Something happens. Emotion appears. Reaction follows instantly. The entire sequence takes seconds. When this pattern dominates your behavior, control disappears. That's the key. Reaction is fast. Control is slow. If you react automatically, your mind becomes predictable. Predictable minds are easily influenced by emotion. Emotion pushes. Reaction obeys. Discipline loses authority. You have a choice. React immediately. Or respond deliberately. The difference begins with stillness. Stillness interrupts the automatic pattern. When a situation appears, pause. Do not rush to act. Slow your breathing. Relax your posture. Allow a moment of space before movement. This pause changes everything. That brief moment restores awareness. Awareness allows evaluation. Evaluation strengthens discipline. Most people believe reaction shows confidence. In reality, reaction often reveals lack of control. Confidence appears calm. Confidence is not rushed. Confidence observes before deciding. Rushed behavior amplifies problems. Calm behavior reduces them. Stillness is your advantage. When pressure appears, the nervous system accelerates. Breathing becomes shallow. Muscles tighten. Attention narrows. These signals push you toward reaction. If you act immediately, emotion controls behavior. If you pause, intensity decreases. Reduced intensity improves thinking. Improved thinking creates deliberate response. Response protects discipline. You do not need their permission to pause before speaking. Even when others expect immediate action. Silence can be strategic. Silence allows observation. Observation improves accuracy. Accuracy prevents unnecessary mistakes. Mistakes often come from rushed reaction. A harsh message receives an angry reply. A misunderstanding becomes conflict. A minor problem grows into a major one. All because reaction happened too quickly. Stillness prevents escalation. That's the key. Response requires awareness. Awareness requires discipline. When you train this pattern repeatedly, something changes. Reaction weakens. Response strengthens. You begin to notice emotional signals earlier. You recognize tension rising. You sense impatience forming. Instead of acting instantly, you regulate. This regulation protects stability. Stability strengthens authority. Authority over yourself is the foundation of discipline. Response also improves communication. Words chosen deliberately carry more weight. Measured tone reduces conflict. Clear language prevents misunderstanding. These outcomes come from regulation. Most emotional conflict begins with reaction. Reaction creates heat. Heat reduces clarity. Reduced clarity produces poor decisions. Poor decisions create regret. Regret drains energy. Energy lost weakens focus. Everything connects. You must replace reaction with response. This requires repetition. Every moment of pause strengthens the habit. Every deliberate response builds internal authority. Authority reshapes identity. Identity determines behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes. You have a choice. Live in reaction. Or operate in response. Reaction is emotional. Response is disciplined. Reaction escalates. Response stabilizes. Reaction amplifies noise. Response restores clarity. It's not about suppression. It's about discipline. Suppression hides emotion. Discipline regulates it. Regulation keeps behavior aligned with standards. Standards protect progress. Progress reinforces discipline. Stillness must become automatic. Pause when tension rises. Pause when someone provokes you. Pause when uncertainty appears. These pauses protect your mind. Over time, response becomes natural. The mind becomes quieter. Emotion still appears. It no longer dominates behavior. This is the beginning of mental mastery. You stopped obeying every thought. You paused before escalation. You directed attention deliberately. You questioned emotional signals. You removed internal chaos. Now you understand how to replace reaction with response. Next, you must protect your mind from external influence. Because the environment shapes what enters your attention. Your mind does not operate in isolation. What surrounds you influences what happens inside you. Noise enters. Images enter. Opinions enter. Information enters constantly. Most people ignore this influence. They assume their thoughts are independent. They are not. Your environment shapes the mind. That's the key. Unfiltered input creates emotional instability. Every signal you absorb affects attention. Every piece of information competes for influence. If you allow everything inside your mental space, discipline weakens. The mind becomes crowded. Crowded minds struggle to remain calm. Calm is required for control. You have a choice. Protect your mental environment. Or allow every influence to shape your thinking. Most people consume information without discipline. They scroll endlessly. They read every opinion. They watch every reaction. They listen to constant commentary. All of this fills the mind with noise. Noise weakens clarity. Clarity strengthens discipline. When the mind absorbs too many signals, emotional volatility increases. Every message creates a reaction. Every opinion provokes comparison. Every image stimulates desire or insecurity. The mind becomes reactive. Reactive minds cannot remain stable. Stability requires boundaries. Stillness is easier in a controlled environment. Remove unnecessary noise. Silence notifications. Limit random information. Create space where your mind can remain focused. This is not isolation. It is discipline. You do not need their permission to filter what enters your mind. Not every voice deserves your attention. Not every problem deserves your focus. Selective input strengthens clarity. Clarity stabilizes emotion. Stable emotion supports disciplined action. Most people protect their physical environment. They lock their doors. They secure their possessions. Yet they leave their mental environment completely open. Anyone can enter. Any opinion can influence them. Any signal can redirect attention. This lack of protection weakens internal authority. Authority begins with control of attention. Attention must be guarded carefully. Guarding attention requires awareness. Notice how your mood changes after exposure to certain environments. Notice how certain inputs create agitation. Notice how others create calm. These signals reveal influence. Influence must be managed. That's the key. Mental stability depends on controlled input. When your environment is calm, your mind becomes calmer. When your environment is chaotic, emotional signals increase. Chaos feeds distraction. Distraction weakens discipline. You must simplify your surroundings. Clean spaces. Quiet spaces. Focused spaces. These environments reduce mental noise. Reduced noise improves concentration. Concentration strengthens discipline. Your social environment also matters. Conversations influence emotional state. Constant negativity weakens stability. Constant outrage amplifies reaction. Choose carefully what conversations you absorb. You do not need to engage with every opinion. Silence can be a boundary. Boundaries protect your attention. Attention protects discipline. Stillness also protects the mind. Take moments during the day without stimulation. No screens. No noise. Just calm breathing. These pauses reset the nervous system. Resetting the nervous system reduces emotional intensity. Reduced intensity improves clarity. Clarity strengthens control. You have a choice. Let your environment shape your mind. Or shape your environment deliberately. Most people accept whatever environment surrounds them. Disciplined individuals design their environment. They reduce noise. They remove unnecessary stimulation. They protect attention. Over time, the difference becomes visible. A protected mind becomes calm. A calm mind becomes focused. Focused minds execute consistently. Consistent execution produces results. Results reinforce discipline. Everything connects. Mastering your mind requires protecting what enters it. You stopped obeying every thought. You paused before escalation. You directed attention deliberately. You questioned emotional signals. You removed internal chaos. You replaced reaction with response. Now you understand that external influence must be controlled. Next, you must develop the ability to remain calm even when the mind becomes active. Most people wait for calm. They hope the mind will slow down on its own. They expect peace to appear when circumstances improve. That expectation keeps them unstable. Calm does not appear automatically. Calm is trained. That's the key. Stillness is a skill. Like any skill, it improves through repetition. Without training, the mind remains reactive. Thoughts accelerate. Emotions intensify. Attention fragments. When the mind is untrained, internal noise grows quickly. Noise weakens discipline. You have a choice. Let the mind move uncontrollably. Or train stillness deliberately. Training begins with simple observation. You sit quietly. You breathe slowly. You notice the movement of the mind. Thoughts appear. Memories surface. Concerns arise. You do not chase them. You observe them. Observation changes your relationship with thought. Instead of becoming the thought, you witness it. Witnessing creates distance. Distance restores control. Most people resist stillness. Silence feels uncomfortable. The mind produces endless commentary. Discomfort tempts you to escape. You check your phone. You seek stimulation. You fill the silence. This behavior strengthens mental noise. Noise weakens clarity. Clarity strengthens discipline. Stillness must become deliberate practice. Start with short periods. Sit quietly for a few minutes. Focus on breathing. Allow thoughts to pass without reaction. Each moment of observation trains control. Each moment of reaction strengthens distraction. Stillness strengthens awareness. Awareness reveals patterns. You notice repetitive thoughts. You see how emotions appear. You observe how quickly the mind escalates. When you see these patterns clearly, you gain authority. Authority over the mind is the foundation of discipline. You do not need their permission to sit quietly. In a world that celebrates constant activity, stillness becomes rare. But rarity creates advantage. Calm individuals see what reactive minds miss. Calm individuals respond with precision. Calm individuals maintain stability under pressure. This advantage is earned through training. Stillness also regulates the nervous system. When you breathe slowly, the body relaxes. Heart rate decreases. Muscle tension softens. Signals of safety reach the brain. These signals reduce emotional intensity. Reduced intensity restores rational thinking. Rational thinking supports discipline. Many people attempt to control emotion directly. They fight their feelings. They resist their thoughts. This creates internal conflict. Conflict consumes energy. Stillness avoids conflict. You allow thoughts to exist. You simply refuse to obey them. That distinction builds power. You observe the mind without becoming trapped inside it. Over time, something changes. The mind slows naturally. Thoughts still appear, but they lose urgency. Emotion still arises, but it fades faster. You remain steady. That steadiness becomes identity. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior determines outcomes. Everything connects. Stillness must also appear during activity. When frustration rises, pause. When irritation appears, slow your breathing. When pressure increases, relax your posture. These micro moments of stillness interrupt escalation. Escalation thrives on speed. Stillness slows the process. Slow thinking improves judgment. Improved judgment strengthens discipline. You have a choice. Let emotional momentum control you. Or interrupt it with calm awareness. Momentum amplifies reaction. Stillness restores control. It's not about escape. It's about discipline. Discipline trains the mind to remain steady. Steady minds produce deliberate action. Deliberate action creates consistent progress. Consistency reinforces discipline. Many people search for motivation. Motivation rises and falls. Stillness creates stability. Stability makes discipline sustainable. You stopped obeying every thought. You paused before escalation. You directed attention deliberately. You questioned emotional signals. You removed internal chaos. You replaced reaction with response. You protected your mental environment. Now you are training stillness itself. Next, you must reinforce control by creating structure that stabilizes your behavior. Impulse feels natural. Structure feels deliberate. Most people live through impulse. They act when they feel ready. They stop when they feel resistance. They change direction when emotion shifts. This creates instability. Instability weakens discipline. That's the key. Impulse reacts to the moment. Structure creates consistency. Consistency builds control. Without structure, the mind negotiates constantly. Should I start now? Should I wait? Should I switch tasks? Each decision drains mental energy. When energy declines, emotion takes control. Emotion prefers comfort. Comfort weakens discipline. You have a choice. Live through impulse. Or build structure that stabilizes behavior. Structure removes unnecessary decisions. You wake at a defined time. You begin work at a defined time. You pause deliberately. You finish defined tasks. These decisions are made in advance. Pre-decided behavior reduces mental noise. Noise weakens clarity. Clarity strengthens discipline. Most people believe discipline requires constant motivation. Motivation is unreliable. Structure replaces motivation. When the schedule exists, action becomes predictable. Predictable behavior strengthens identity. Identity shapes outcomes. Everything connects. Stillness helps reinforce structure. When the mind resists routine, pause. Observe the resistance. Do not obey it immediately. Return to the structure. This repetition trains stability. Stability weakens emotional fluctuation. Emotional fluctuation disrupts discipline. Structure also protects attention. When time blocks are defined, distraction loses influence. You do not switch tasks randomly. You follow the plan. Plans create direction. Direction stabilizes the mind. Stable minds execute consistently. Consistent execution builds confidence. Confidence reinforces discipline. You do not need their permission to organize your day. Even when others operate chaotically. Even when external pressure appears. Structure remains your anchor. Anchors stabilize movement. Without an anchor, the mind drifts. Drifting attention creates emotional turbulence. Turbulence weakens judgment. Judgment requires calm thinking. Calm thinking requires order. Order strengthens discipline. Most people underestimate the power of routine. They believe routine removes freedom. The opposite is true. Routine removes confusion. Confusion consumes energy. Energy lost reduces control. When behavior becomes predictable, mental space increases. Mental space allows deeper focus. Deep focus produces meaningful progress. Meaningful progress reinforces discipline. It's not about rigidity. It's about discipline. Discipline creates rhythm. Rhythm stabilizes the mind. Stable minds resist impulse. Impulse often appears during discomfort. You feel bored. You switch tasks. You feel tired. You stop working. You feel uncertain. You delay action. Structure prevents these reactions. The routine remains. You follow it calmly. Even when the mind suggests something different. You have a choice. Allow impulse to direct your day. Or let structure guide your actions. Impulse feels immediate. Structure feels steady. Steady systems create reliable progress. Reliable progress strengthens confidence. Confidence stabilizes the mind. A stable mind maintains discipline. Over time, structure becomes identity. You no longer debate your behavior. You simply follow your standard. This removes internal conflict. Internal conflict weakens control. Control strengthens discipline. When impulse appears, you return to the structure. When distraction appears, you return to the structure. When doubt appears, you return to the structure. That repetition builds authority. Authority over your mind defines mastery. You stopped obeying every thought. You paused before escalation. You directed attention deliberately. You questioned emotional signals. You removed internal chaos. You replaced reaction with response. You protected your environment. You trained stillness. Now structure replaces impulse. Next, you must fully assume authority over your mind. Because discipline becomes permanent when identity shifts. Authority over the mind is not automatic. It must be built. Most people live under the influence of their thoughts. A thought appears. Emotion rises. Reaction follows. They believe this pattern is normal. They believe they cannot control it. That belief keeps them unstable. That's the key. Your mind produces thoughts. It does not command you. Authority belongs to the observer. When you understand this distinction, control becomes possible. Most people identify with every thought. If the mind says something negative, they believe it. If the mind predicts failure, they hesitate. If the mind imagines conflict, they react. They become servants to mental noise. You must reverse that relationship. You are not the thought. You are the one observing it. Observation creates authority. Authority allows discipline. Without authority, the mind drifts. Drifting minds become reactive. Reactive behavior weakens stability. You have a choice. Allow your thoughts to dominate behavior. Or become the authority evaluating them. Evaluation requires stillness. Stillness slows reaction. When a thought appears, pause. Notice it clearly. Do not rush to obey it. Most thoughts disappear quickly when ignored. Attention keeps them alive. Remove attention and they fade. That simple action strengthens control. You do not need their permission to regulate your own mind. Even when others act impulsively. Even when emotional reactions appear around you. Your discipline is internal. Internal authority stabilizes behavior. Stability builds confidence. Confidence reduces emotional volatility. Emotional volatility weakens judgment. Judgment must remain clear. Clear judgment requires distance from thought. Distance allows evaluation. Evaluation creates deliberate response. This process transforms identity. Instead of being controlled by the mind, you direct it. Instead of reacting emotionally, you choose behavior. Instead of following impulse, you follow principle. This is mental authority. Mental authority is quiet. It is not dramatic. It does not require constant force. It requires discipline. Discipline repeated becomes habit. Habit shapes identity. Identity determines outcomes. When authority grows, something changes. Thoughts lose urgency. Emotions lose intensity. You remain steady. A steady mind sees reality clearly. Clarity produces better decisions. Better decisions create better results. Results reinforce discipline. Authority also strengthens resilience. Challenges appear. The mind produces doubt. But doubt no longer dominates behavior. You observe it. You continue forward. Fear appears. You acknowledge it. You regulate it. You act anyway. This stability separates disciplined individuals from reactive ones. Reactive minds chase emotional signals. Disciplined minds follow standards. Standards create direction. Direction stabilizes progress. Everything connects. Stillness remains essential. Even when authority grows, you continue practicing pause. You slow your breathing when tension rises. You observe the mind when thoughts accelerate. These small practices maintain control. Control is never permanent without maintenance. Maintenance requires discipline. But discipline becomes easier over time. When identity shifts, behavior becomes natural. You no longer fight your mind. You guide it. Guidance replaces struggle. Calm replaces chaos. You have a choice. Live inside the noise of your thoughts, or stand above them. Standing above the mind creates clarity. Clarity strengthens discipline. Discipline stabilizes life. You stopped obeying every thought. You learned to pause before escalation. You directed attention deliberately. You questioned emotional signals. You removed internal chaos. You replaced reaction with response. You protected your environment. You trained stillness. You replaced impulse with structure. Now you understand the final step. Become the authority over your mind. Master your mind. And remain that way. Your mind will continue producing thoughts. Emotion will continue appearing. Impulse will continue pushing for reaction. That will not change. What must change is your response. You do not obey every thought. You observe it. You do not react to every feeling. You regulate it. You do not allow attention to drift without control. You direct it. Pause before reaction. Protect your focus. Enforce your standards. Repeat daily. Mastery of the mind is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is disciplined. It is controlled. From this moment forward, act deliberately. Master your mind.